Hey guys, welcome to another video tutorial in Gamemaker Studio 2. In this tutorial, we're going to go over the basics of Gamemaker Studio's image editor, and I'm going to show you guys some tools for creating pixel graphics for your games. So the first thing we're going to do is create a new sprite, and let's just name it S-Test. And right here, you'll see your default size of your sprite, and for me it's 64 by 64, and it's probably the same for you. And if it's not, it's okay. You can always resize. So you can either click Edit Image, or you can double tap this image right here. And if you have multiple frames, you can add more frames also by hitting this plus button. And if you have multiple frames, you can double click any of these to go directly to it to edit. So you can click these X's to delete those extra images. And then we're going to open up our image. So after you double click, you'll be taken into a new workspace, and this is Gamemaker's image editor. And you'll see it's pretty basic. It really is basic. It has some pretty cool tools. It's not super extensive. I would recommend using an external image editor for most of your graphics, but I do use Gamemaker a lot for animating and things like that. Since it's in the IDE right here, and I don't have to go out and then import frames back in. So I'll just, a lot of times for my basic animations, just do it right inside of this. So you default to your pencil, which you could draw. It's 1 pixel by 1 pixel by default, which is usually what you want. But let's say you need to draw at a higher scale, and if you are following my make a platform game in Gamemaker Studio 2 tutorial, then you will need to create your graphics at 4 times resolution. So what I mean by that is each pixel actually needs to be represented by 4 pixels vertically and 4 pixels horizontally. So a square this large will represent 1 pixel inside of that game. So how we could set up this image editor to do something like that is pretty simple, really. So first of all, we need to get our pencil to stamp a 4x4 pixel, or something that looks like this by default, so we don't have to draw out each square. And this is really easy to do. We could just go up to the size and then hit 4. So our pixels are 4x4 now instead of 1x1. And you can see now I have a 4x4 stamp. But you'll notice I'm not in a grid. I can still kind of mess up things. I'm not snapping to a 4x4 grid to be able to exit out of here. And it's another easy setup to do. We can just go over here to this little menu and click this drop down, just like in the room editor for Gamemaker Studio 2. And you can see our grid X right now is 16 by 16. We can change that to 4 by 4, which is the size of each pixel we want to use. But you'll see it's still not snapping, but at least it's telling us where it's going. But if we just hit this snap checkbox, now it's going to snap us to this 4 by 4 grid. And we can actually create pixelated graphics at a 64 by 64 resolution. And this is what we'll be doing in the platformer tutorial that I have created. So enough of that. What if we want to fill? Well, it's simple. We have a fill bucket over here. You can hit F. I try to use shortcut keys. If you hover over these, it will tell you all the shortcut keys. So I hit F, and then it'll just fill the area just like that. And you can also erase a color. So let's say you import an image from Paint. You're using Microsoft Paint. I don't believe there's any way to export an image with a transparent background. So when you import it in the Gamemaker, it will have whatever background that you set. Well, Gamemaker has this little tool called Color Removal Tool. You could hit H or just click where I'm pointed. And then you hover over the color you want to delete, and you click. It's that simple. So I'm going to press Control Z, which is their undo function, and I'm going to draw a circle here. And now I want to make everything that I didn't just draw disappear. Well, I hit H, boom, all those colors are now gone. So that's a really cool feature, especially when you're importing from other software that might not support transparent backgrounds. The only issue you could have with that is if your background color is also a color that's used in your sprite. So anytime you're using an external image program, make sure that your background color is not used in your sprite. And then when you import it into GameMaker, you could simply click this tool and delete a color. And then there's also a color replace tool. So what this does is whatever color you select, it replaces it with, I believe, yep, your whatever color you have set. So if I want to replace this yellow with this blue right here, then I simply use the color replace tool and I click, and then all the colors are replaced. It's that easy, and that's really good for recoloring images or changing a background color. It's a really, really useful tool. And then another really useful tool would be all of these shape tools. So you want to make a circle. Let me go ahead and go up here. And I want to make a circle. See how it's filled out? Well, in Gamemaker Studio 2, notice how this box is cut in half. If you click the top half of the box, it creates a circle that is not filled. Same with the square. So I click the bottom half and it's a filled square. I click the top half and it's an empty square. And another thing you can do is hide this. See how I just accidentally clicked it, this bar? You could hit this arrow right here and it actually hides it, which is really useful too. All right, so we went over those. We also have a polygon tool. You can draw a quick polygon with this. It's pretty cool. We have our simple line tool. Also, if you're using the pencil, you can hold down shift and it'll draw a straight line, and you can't go upwards with it, just vertically or horizontally. For color picking, so I want to pick, let's say I have this green right here, and I want to pick that. I'm currently on the blue. I can simply click this eyedropper tool and pick that color, or another option is to press O, pick that color, and then B will take you back to your pencil. Wait, not B. D will take you back to your pencil, and then you can draw. Or you can hold down Control, and that will select the color when you click, and you don't have to swap between the tools. So you could just hold Control, pick that color, pick that black, pick that blue, pick the black, whatever. You could go back and forth. And one thing you'll notice is your most recently used colors are going to be down in this little palette area. So that's really useful for being able to get back to recently used colors. Or if you selected a color over here, they'll be put down there. Also, you can double click your current color and you can edit it inside of the color properties. Let's see what else. So another pretty cool feature about Gamemaker Studio 2's image editing is creating brushes. So let's say I have like this area and it actually was something. I could hit S or click the select box, and I could select pieces of this grid, and then I can hit Control C to copy, and it actually puts a brush in my brush selector. And now I could actually paint with this brush, and you could do this with anything. You could create anything and make some kind of brush. To get back, you just have to click your brush. So the 1 pixel by 1 pixel brush is what I'm at now. And notice I don't have that 4x4 anymore, so I need to increase the size one more time. And now I'm at a 4x4 brush. And then we have Magic Wand tool, which is for selecting, it's kind of like a reverse fill tool. So let's say you're using your bucket. You could fill this entire area with a color. Well, it's kind of a fill, it's a selective fill tool. So whatever would be filled, it selects that area. So I can actually Control X and I can cut all that out. So that's really useful for selecting a circle or something like that, and you would just click that wand and then click this area and you see how it selects all of this color. Or I can do it again, come down here, cut, or come down here, cut, come down here, and it just selects that specific color that you click as long as they're connected pieces. See, it doesn't go diagonally, but it will go vertically and horizontally. So that's really useful also. You also have the paint selection tool where you can just basically draw what you're trying to select, and then you can move it if you go to the mover tool. Then we go to, let's see what else we got. We have our text tool, and it works okay. It's about as good as Gamemaker Studio 1.4. And then the big thing we have that is really cool is layers. So let me go here. I'm going to select the full image. I'm just going to cut it. And also you can zoom in and out by using control and mouse wheel. Just basically like everything else in Gamemaker Studio 2 works the same way. So you can zoom out or zoom in, whatever you want. Okay, and so now we have layers, which are super useful. And anytime you're doing any kind of digital painting, pixel art, anything, you should be using layers. It's not required. People use Paint, which doesn't have layers, and make great art, but it can definitely make things easier. So I'm going to go ahead and delete these brushes that I just made using the delete key. I can click a brush and hit delete, and it will delete them. And I'm going to select my 1x1, make it 4x4 again, since I'm on that 4x4 grid, which I could always turn off. And I'm going to paint a little something here. I don't know what it is. But let me say I want to add a new layer here. So I'm going to add a layer, and I can rename this. F2 renames any kind of tabs or anything in GameMaker or objects. So I'm going to name it base layer. Now I have a second layer that's on top of this, and you can see I could paint over it like normal. But let me show you something pretty cool about this if you've never used any types of layers and programs. I can now hide what I just drew and see what's under it. Or I can select it and I can move it off and see how it doesn't affect the underlying image. This is really, really powerful, and it is really useful in just about anything you're creating. So let's say you have like a silhouette you're drawing over and you don't want to erase the original silhouette. You could just create a new layer, paint over the silhouette within the lines, and then eventually you could just delete the silhouette if you wanted, if you were happy with it, or you could delete your current layer and go back to your silhouette. So those are just a couple really useful things about layers. You can, let's see, you can also move these, reorder them, so you can bring one layer over another one. You can add a layer group, so if you have a more complex image, you can drag layers into this group and make it more organized. And then what else is there? We still have this image tab toolbar up top. If you click it, this is how you'll do your importing from strip images. Works just like Gamemaker Studio 1.4 or before. You have a Sprite Sheet, and you want to pull it apart into different frames. That's the tool you would use. And then you can export to a PNG. It'll export a full sprite sheet if you have multiple frames. So let's say I come up here and I do Control-C, copy, Control-V, paste, and I make multiple frames. And then I want to animate the color. So I go down to this layer. I do like a color replace, I make it red, and then I make it blue. And then I can hit play here and watch it animate. I can change the default animation speed of this sprite, which applies in GameMaker as well. When you run the game, it goes by the speed that you set initially. But I want to export the sprite sheet, so I go up to Image, Export to PNG, and then Test Strip 3. Where am I putting it? And then I delete all these and then go to import strip image. I want to import that test strip, and I know that I have 3 frames and there's 3 frames per row, and each frame is 64 by 64 pixels. I hit convert, and there you go. I'm back at that image. It's that simple. And what else should we do here? Okay, one more really cool thing about layers that I missed previously. Let's duplicate this layer. Let's edit the positioning of this layer a little bit, and then let's do a color replace and make it green. And let's change the ordering. And now I can go into edit layer properties by right-clicking this layer. I can set its blend mode to, let's say, multiply. And you see what happens? It sets the blend mode to multiply. That's what it does. Or subtract, or add. So I can actually create blend modes like this, or I could simply reduce the opacity of this top layer, and I could give it a slight colorization, or this is really good for lighting effects or anything that you need like a translucent appearance. So let's say you had a character with a head and you wanted to put like a glass helmet on him. You could draw just a blue helmet and then in a new layer, put it over his head, and then simply reduce the opacity and make it fit however you wanted, and it would look like he has a glass helmet on because it's transparent. So anything like that, it's really good for. There's a million uses for it. And I think I'm running out of time, but that's the basics of Gamemaker. The really important stuff, if you're following my platformer tutorial series, is making sure that you know how to do the 4x4 drawing. So you can set your brush to 4 pixels by 4 pixels, and then you can set the grid to 4 pixels by 4 pixels, and then clicking the snap, and that'll allow you to paint in Gamemaker Studio a scaled image. So you're actually painting a 4 times zoomed image that is a certain percent greater than your original image. But I'm going to leave it there, and hopefully you learned a couple things about GMS 2's image editing, and I hope you guys can make some sprites now. I'll see you later, and watch out for my new videos. Thank you.